Yo, what's up my people? Leo tuko na documentary, another very interesting documentary. Unakumbuka hii familia fulani hapa. So documentary ya leo ni how this couple fooled their whole country. Pastor stabbed wife. Nakumbuka kama unakumbuka hii kitu ile trend last week. Is it last week? Well, ilikuwa last month. Acha tusikie ilikuwa chocha tena.
Florence Wanjiku alias Shiko alleged that she was brutally stabbed 18 times by her boyfriend, who is also the father of her daughter. Elias Njeru Mutugi Njau, a church elder and a man of God, is the man being accused of this brutal attack. But that is Wanjiku's side of the story. According to Mutugi and CCTV footages of the same night that he has presented to the police, it is Wanjiku who attacked the pastor, hitting his car 3 times. Who is fooling Kenyans between the two? Remember, this case is being reported just weeks after a woman allegedly abducted herself and ended up fooling the entire nation, which was fighting for her release by whoever had abducted her. In this generation, we look at both sides of the story while analyzing Elias Mutugi's past.
Yo, mwenye anajua hii story hapa. Let me see. Hii story gani? Hebu niambie hapa kwa comment section. Ama nitumie tu video yote. Let me react to that story. Hii au
being reported just weeks after a woman allegedly abducted herself and ended up fooling the entire nation, which was fighting for her release by whoever had abducted her. In this generation, we look at both sides of the story while analyzing Elias Mutugi's past and Florence Wanjiku's alleged relationship with his gatekeeper, which may be instrumental to giving us clues as to who is fooling the entire nation. The time is around 3 a.m. on Friday, the 22nd of November 2024, and a lady is rushed in.
Yeah, okay, so ilikuwa last week, early last week,
to Optimum Hospital in Nakuru County. She is profusely bleeding from stabs on her head and from deep cuts on her hands. On a closer look, some of her fingers are missing. It is evident that the lady is in so much pain and she is almost passing out from the excessive bleeding. But although she was weak, almost unconscious, and nearly losing her life, she kept on chanting the words, "Njeru Mutugi, leave me alone. Njeru Mutugi, wachana na mimi." She did not stop. She chanted for quite some time. As she received treatment, some medics who had her chant,
so after niende umemwattack, unaenda tena unasema ati leave me alone. Who should leave the other one alone? Hebu nyinyi mniambie, like nani anafaa kuachana na mwingine?
could only wonder,
Any murder.
Who is this man Njeru Mutugi and what had he done? Briefly, for the context, Njeru Mutugi, also known as Elias Njau, is a respected businessman in Nakuru who turned into a pastor at the Jesus Crusaders Ministries, JCM Church in Nakuru. Despite the man being socially upright, there were some red flags in his relationships. He was born on 16th August 1989 in Sagana, Central Kenya. He was brought up in a Christian family and rose to be a God-fearing child. Though information of his education is scarce, I found clues insinuating that he attended Kahiro Primary School, where he passed and joined Baricho High School. There, he also secured a spot in Kenyatta University too. Sometime, their new business was doing okay, but not their relationship. Allegedly, Mutugi still had insecurities from his previous marriage, where he was left by the wife and as a result, kept on frustrating Florence. Last year, during a trip from Nakuru to Nairobi, Florence was set up by Mutugi and she got accosted and arrested by officers from the DCI. The officers arrested her over claims that she had stolen the company car she was driving. She was thus forced to
Udem ni mwizi. Like, Hakuna kitu wewe si. Mara wewe ni ataka, wewe ni mwongo, wewe ni mwizi. Haya.
Spent that whole weekend in jail with her then 1-year-old baby. She stayed locked up until finally Mutugi assented to her release. Their relationship became strained as Florence started distancing herself from him and even avoiding the office. Despite this, Elias continued to show up without notice at her house and began demanding to either see her or the baby. After some time, he stopped honoring his part of the partnership contract. According to Florence,
So alikuwa ashaachana. Yeah, that's not what I'm getting.
Mutugi owed her a huge amount of money which Mutugi had failed to pay, and this caused cracks to develop in their relationship.
And he also owes me some finances. I was also requesting for that money.
So when she noticed that they were drifting apart and that Mutugi was neither a good father nor a good business partner, she decided to ask for her money before calling off the relationship. The money is alleged to be a huge amount of money. Florence allegedly asked for her money in vain. It was then that the two planned to have a meeting on 21st November where Florence was set to ask for her money and put an end to the relationship. They were also to discuss how they were to co-parent their daughter. The meeting, which was scheduled to start at 5 p.m. and end at 10 p.m. in a restaurant in Nakuru, started a little bit later and took a little bit longer to end.
Nikafanya kazi mpaka around 5:45. Hapo ndio nilitoka, ndio nielekea mahali meeting ilikuwa ifanyike. Nilianza kumpigia Elias Njero Mutugi simu. Kamwambia tutapatana apps Milimani.
The two met and according to Florence, the meeting went as she had planned.
Hatukuwa tunasikizana kikazi ama kimahusiano for quite some time. So tukaongea na ombi langu ilikuwa aniondokea na ni ombi nimekuwa nalo for let me say the whole of this year. Alikubali shingo upande.
She officially ended their relationship, and after coming to an agreement, the two parted ways amicably and Florence set off for her home. She drove back home not knowing that her estranged lover had secretly trailed her to her home, and as soon as she arrived at the entrance, he became hostile and confronted her. Wanjiku tried to drive away, but unfortunately, her car hit the rear of Mutugi's car that had blocked the way. This brought her to a dead halt. She then tried to lock the door. Actually, she locked the door, but her window was open. So Mutugi squeezed his upper body through the window and switched off the car. After switching off the car, he grabbed the keys. He then began to viciously assault the trapped and helpless Florence by hitting her severally on the head using his fists and then dragged her outside the car. Outside, Elias fished out a machete which he used to stab Florence 18 times. He constantly stabbed her on the head, but as Florence was trying to protect herself using her hands ended up also being hacked. The man ended up chopping off some of her fingers in the process. As she was struggling with the perpetrator, she was also
Story ni ya ukweli. Mbona ni kama umetwist story
screaming. She screamed out loud and luckily her screams caught the ears.
So I thought ni ude ndo alianza. So venye ude alikuwa anataka kutoroka akagonga hiyo gari. So kugonga hiyo gari huyu jamaa akajump. Akakuja akam
of some night guards. The businesswoman was rescued by the guards and neighbors who rushed her to Optimum Hospital. At the hospital gates, Mutugi, who was wearing a blood-spattered shirt, tried to force his way in to see Florence, but the wary hospital staff denied him access. But that is her side of the story. According to Elias Njeru Mutugi, who surrendered himself.
So that's the side of the female. So okay, yeah, sawa, ndio hii. Okay, so dem Florence anasema alikuwa anataka kutoka, then kibahati mbaya akagonga hiyo gari ya huyo msee. So kugonga hiyo gari, huyo jamaa akakuja akajiforce ndani, alikuwa amelock mlango. So msee akajiforce ndani, akafunga gari na akamdrag nje na akamstab. Hiyo ndio story ya Florence. Acha tusikie kabuda.
To the police on the 25th of November 2024. They met earlier on during the night, and after the meeting, he remained behind in the restaurant to get some refreshments. Meanwhile, Florence Wanjiku drove back home. CCTV footages show her arriving in their Kiamunyi home, where on arrival, she hugs the gatekeeper. Very strange. Who hugs her gatekeeper on arriving home? Anyway, at that time, Mutugi is not home yet. She gets in the house and after a while, she gets out and drives away, allegedly going to see Mutugi. But a few minutes later, Mutugi gets home before her. He is seen talking to the watchman, and while still at that, Wanjiku arrives and parks next to him. But within a moment, she drove back and came back speeding to hit Mutugi's car from the back.
Umecheki? So alinotice tu ndo Kasia amefika hapa.
Mutugi got out of the car and ran to Florence, who he noticed was intoxicated with alcohol, or so he alleges. The two struggle as Florence
Umecheki, yeni mara ya pili.
hits Mutugi's car again and again. The watchman runs to help. Mutugi even falls to the ground, hurting his arms, but he is still determined to stop her. After a heated struggle, he manages to stop her by switching off the car and snatching away the keys. He then limped back to his car and drove away. What was Florence up to? Did Njeru Mutugi stab him during the struggle? According to the CCTV footage, it is evident that Mutugi didn't have a knife with him. And also, it is evident that Florence Wanjiku's part of the story where Mutugi follows her home is not quite true. So, who is fooling us? Netizens allege that Florence Wanjiku had an affair with the watchman, and that when the DCI arrested her last year, she was indeed at fault. But again, if it isn't Mutugi Njau who stabbed her, then who did it? Is Florence just seeking sympathy from Kenyans, or is she sincere? I, however, don't think anyone would stab and cut off her fingers just to seek sympathy. If at all she is telling
It makes sense, it makes sense.
the truth, then may justice be served and Elias Njau Mutugi be arrested. But if at all she is lying, then may she also be punished for lying, so that the government may put.
Anyway, that's the end of our video. Niambie ilikuwaje? Hii story ni ukweli ama huyu jamaa amechachisha ama what's going on? Do you know the story? Like, niambie tu anything. What you think? Like the video, subscribe, and also comment. Thank you.